The details at the bottom of the hour.
Good afternoon to you, Nigeria. Good afternoon, Ghana. Cameroon. Good afternoon to you, Togo. Côte d'Ivoire. Good afternoon, Senegal. Ethiopia. Kenya. Good afternoon, Eswatini, Lesotho, Mozambique. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. This is where you get the African perspective. It's where we meet to look at the latest in news, sport, and business. This Friday afternoon, yes indeed, it is the day and the date that the whole world has been waiting for, the 1st of August. We dissect this afternoon the aftermath of the Trump tariffs. A sigh of relief, I believe, is being breathed by many a country, including Lesotho. You'll remember that they were our focus as well during the course of this week. A sigh of relief for them. We'll also look at the U.S. tariffs as far as South Africa is concerned. That and a whole lot more coming up on Africa in Business this afternoon.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 7 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Welcome to it if you've just joined us. This is Africa in Business. We'll focus this afternoon on a number of stories, including the trade tariffs. And as you know, we've got our weekly business roundup with Victor Khumoswana, who'll be joining us at 10 minutes to 5 o'clock. Also, we'll be looking at debt and the credit life insurance, which exists to safeguard many consumer when life strikes you and life happens. How do you ensure that you remain afloat? We'll be looking at some of these instruments. But we begin here this afternoon with the wholesale and retail sector. They held a dialogue with industry leaders this week on how to help prepare the sector for the future. And this is to retain as well as grow its contributions to the country's economy. Industry leaders say skills offered by universities currently are not in line with what the industry needs. The CETA brought together leaders from institutions of higher learning and the sector to come with solutions that will help future-proof the industry. Dimakato Leshuru has the details.
South Africa is increasingly becoming a service-based economy, and 60% of GDP comes from services. Within that category of the economy, 20% is from the wholesale and retail sector. But the sector has seen declines and is looking for ways to improve its offering and also help reduce levels of unemployment, especially among the youth. Delegates from various parts of the sector met to chat a way on how to make this industry attractive to younger people as a career path. Young people currently do not view this sector as one in which they can create professional careers, and delegates say there's a need to resell the industry. Nazim Kasim is the managing director of the Retail Institute of South Africa.
Certainly, we all know that retail is a powerhouse. We employ over 20% of our workforce, and it continues to grow, but it's really seen as a profession. And what we really need is a certified career framework from a retail sales associate, your cashiers, your salespeople, etc., all the way through to directors, executives, and really backed by competence and training that can upskill them. So what we need to do is embed tools like analytics into these pathways, giving students, retailers, data-led capability to drive transformation into a new era of retailing. The model also must align with NSDS and the WNRC's goals to drive employability and build career ambition. And so what we're looking at is that retail needs to become a profession and not a fallback. Here's our barrier. Our barrier is that there's just poor public perception. Retail is often seen as a low-skill job, menial, casual, unstructured. skills gap do persist in terms of a shortage in tech-enabled customer service, analytics, and management. And so essentially, there's just no direct entry into retail.
Adding to the complexities faced by the sector is the economic stagnation and high levels of unemployment that have created a toxic mix for the sustainability and the future growth of the industry. The sector is vulnerable to inflation patterns, and household consumption has remained muted on the back of high levels of joblessness and increases in the cost of living. The wholesale and retail sector is engaged with future-proofing through working with institutions on higher learning on skills that are required now and in the future. Industry leaders here say some of the graduates out of universities are wholly unable to work or have unreal expectations about the retail industry. Ntombi Dludla is responsible for stakeholder engagement at Boxer Supermarkets.
We've got graduates with a degree in business management, a degree in marketing, degree in HR, and the industry is moving. The industry is moving to data. And we can't have 17 HR people. We can't have 17 marketers and public admin people. So that's where we feel that there's quite a big gap in terms of qualifications not being aligned to the needs of the industry. We need the CAs in the retail space. We need the legal. We need property developers. We're expanding as retailers. So there are key needs and priorities and the specific qualifications that we need, that we still feel that there's a gap, what we are being flooded with.
Tom Konazi, the chief executive of the wholesale and retail SETA, says the industry is forced to reimagine retail in the era of e-commerce that has changed the face of retail. It's estimated that over 5 years, retail has grown from about 1% to more than 17% of the retail economy. But while retailers figure this out, they also need to think about sustainability.
We therefore need to think about how do we then reskill, multi-skill, do everything to ensure that those that are in the workspace are really, really supported. You'd see that, again, we have been struggling in terms of meeting our targets. It could not be that it's your problem, but there could be a challenge somewhere in terms of why you are not taking up our programs for the employed. So we don't want to necessarily blame you, but we want to have that conversation in terms of what we can do.
For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakazo Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa means business. Tune into Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni for the future of the African economy. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is exactly 14 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. As U.S. imposed tariffs come into effect from today, the 1st of August, the South African government has launched measures to support exporters impacted by the U.S. tariff hike. The country's Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, the DTIC, says it's working with urgency to resolve and implement real practical interventions that defend jobs. Earlier this week, the Citrus Growers Association of South Africa implored the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, to request for an extension of the current 10% U.S. tariff beyond the 1st of August deadline. This in order to save hundreds of thousands of fresh produce that's ready to be shipped to the American market. To find out what impact this will have on the agricultural sector, we joined on the line by Tabile Nkunjana, an agricultural economist at the National Agricultural Marketing Council. Good to have you with us. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon to you, Thami, and it's always a pleasure having you on the show.
So the Citrus Growers Association of South Africa is worried that the fresh produce that's ready to be shipped to the United States might spoil as it waits for the South African government to get a new trade deal. What does the impact look like for farmers? And perhaps a good place to start is maybe what your reaction is to the latest regarding the tariffs as relating to South Africa.
Yeah, so this time has been coming. It has been coming as much as we've been talking about recently, especially after President Trump took office. But even previously, there has been a growing, relations that seems to be not working between South Africa and the US. So therefore, this, as much as it is now a reality, it's something that has been coming. And of course, now we are really talking about the implications of to it. And that is something that you can overlook, you yourself mentioning a couple of the industries that are really looking into some serious, jeopardy, especially if you are to take in the issues of jobs. Remember, South Africa at this moment, it remains quite important that it can keep all the jobs that it has across the sectors, specifically with agriculture being a rural-based, most of the time, sector, and it supports quite a lot of people and the livelihoods in those regions. So this is generally in a broader scale something that is bringing in quite a threat. For not only for the actual jobs themselves, but remember the revenue. South Africa does export a lot of these, with the US market alone accounting around 10 billion worth of exports of at least of the past 2-3 years on average. So we are really looking into a risk that will have some serious implications, not only for the agricultural sector, but also the supporting sectors, the logistics, and so forth.
I'd like to find out, the Citrus Growers Association wanted a tariff of 10% from the United States. Yeah. The original tariff was, now the tariff as it stands now that has been announced by Trump is 30%. And this is significantly higher than what the Citrus Growers Association would have wanted. Yeah. The two countries haven't managed to secure a trade deal before the deadline of today. How is this likely to impact the agricultural sector and the Citrus Growers Association?
Yeah, so this one is quite a dire situation, Thami, if we're being honest, and specifically if you talk about the citrus, the colleagues there and the farmers and exporters, they are really facing quite a situation as this thing stand. Remember the 10% that the organization was asking for, at least. Even though it was still going to be something as far as South Africa's competition is concerned within that market, the 30% is even way higher than that. So therefore, it means now with the likes of oranges and mandarins that we are currently at the moment we are halfway, like really when the intensification of harvesting and exporting to the US market is midway. So then it means then this, given that it's a fresh produce, that we are sending this for the citrus and the implications for the jobs, as I was telling you, particularly in the Western Cape province, partly, and then of course, to the larger degree in the Northern Cape and the provinces such as KwaZulu-Natal and Mpumalanga, where a lot of our sugar tends to go there. So there's quite a lot that is at stake. But for the citrus growers, at large, which includes oranges, lemons, and mandarins and all that, so it's really a problem now with jobs between 20,000 and 35,000 at risk now if you are to include those people that are across also the value chain of the sector.
One has to speak of AGOA because that was the access to the US market. AGOA was tariff-free. With the tariffs now have increased to 30%, this, many would say, nullifies that market, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as things stand, I mean, even if there was the tariffs, Thami, remember that later on the AGOA thing is something that's to be discussed. We are not sure in terms of how is it gonna go. Even if South Africa or any country was still part of it, or is still part of it as things stand, but we are really not sure, given that President Trump seemed to be, focusing on specific things that he feels like the US should be focusing on. And therefore, it does not really look like AGOA itself is part of that. But nonetheless, to be specific about what you have asked, these tariffs, they practically take out the AGOA, for South Africa now, and even other countries that have been increasing their export. Because remember, South Africa is one of the biggest beneficiaries of the AGOA. It has been leading in terms of the African countries that have been sending products, to the US, which is why, there's been a lot of, talks around this in terms of how is this gonna implicate, some industries, the implications generally for across, the economy of South Africa. It's quite something that for now, it's really taking out the AGOA, as it stands, but
Right.
we're hoping that, things would change as far as time is concerned.
Mr. Nkunjana, there's been a lot of talk over the past 90 days on alternate markets, new markets, and the Minister of Agriculture, John Steenhuisen, had indicated that this is something that he is specifically working towards. Can you give us an update as to which markets have now been secured as alternate markets to try and compensate for this US loss?
So South Africa, Thami, has always been, as I said to you earlier on, that as far as the AGOA thing is concerned, South Africa has been always, working in a thin line, and as a result, there's been a lot of push for alternative markets, and that has happened. There have been relatively some number of bilateral agreements that we have signed with a number of countries in the Middle East and Asia. So that we can be able to diversify our products as much as possible. But the issue with trade and opening up markets, Thami, is not an easy thing. If you recall that, for instance, not so long ago, we just received the good news that we are exporting beef to Saudi Arabia. That took us 20 years to negotiate that market. And then for April, it took 15 years. And given now the complexities that are out there because of the current tariffs, a lot of countries are prioritizing, based on what they need as far as their sectors are concerned. So therefore, for South Africa, as much as we want to diversify, we're going to be sort of depending on what the countries we are talking with, they are prioritizing, because they are also having to deal with the shocks that come with the tariffs that have been imposed on them by President Trump. But South Africa is really busy, and on the ground there are some strategies to assist everyone within the sectors that are being currently, affected by this. And of course, there's a lot of push for the diversification of our products.
Diversification, that is the buzzword. Diversification of product, diversification of trade partners, territory. Thabile Nkunjana, we thank you so much for your insight and contribution this afternoon.
Thanks, Sam. Cheers.
Thank you. That's agricultural economist at the National Agricultural Marketing Council, Thabile Nkunjana. He takes us to exactly 23 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. In just a moment, we continue our focus on the impact that these tariffs are having on different countries, specifically on the African continent. Yes, we've been looking at agriculture, but another industry that's really going to be heavily impacted here is the steel and engineering industry. We know that auto exports, for example, have already been affected. Last year, the country's steel and related exports amounted to $1.8 billion. What will the impact of this 30% tariff have and be on this particular industry? That remains to be seen. I guess a year down the line, we'll be looking back in retrospect. Let's turn our focus now to a country that I think was very nervous, and perhaps many other African countries were nervous on their behalf. And this is because of the 50% tariff that was meted out on them. These tariffs, as we've been discussing, did come into effect today. Now, the world is still adjusting to these new tariffs, and Lesotho is that very country that can now breathe a sigh of relief. They've received a modified tariff rate of 15%. You'll remember that this is a sharp reduction from that 50% which was initially announced. Following the announcement of the reciprocal tariffs by the US President Donald Trump, the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, has called on a united strategy in response to these tariffs. Joining us this afternoon is Dr. Sizo Ngala, a research fellow at the Center for Africa-China Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Dr. Ngala, welcome to Africa in Business.
Thank you and good afternoon.
Your thoughts and your reaction on the tariffs that have now been announced. The 1st of August has been a date that the world has been looking forward to, whether positively or negatively. Your insights, your comments, sir.
Well, I think the Trump presidency, it continues on its disruptive mode. So he has stuck to his tariffs with, I think, 70 countries being affected by reciprocal tariffs at different levels, and another 10% baseline tariff that affects every other country that trades with the United States. So if you look at the list, I think 22 countries on that list are from Africa, in Africa, and uh, no single African country has managed to get a trade deal with the United States, even though some countries like Lesotho, for example, that you mentioned in your introduction, have got a reduction, a massive reduction in the tariff rates that are going to apply to them. But no single African country has got a trade deal with the United States. So I think this shows the low priority that Trump attaches to Africa.
Let's look at Lesotho, for example. What kind of relief does the 15% on Lesotho experts have, for the country, and what does it mean for its economy?
I think the people in Lesotho are having a huge sigh of relief following this announcement, because it literally serves their textile industry. I mean, if the tariffs had stuck to the 50% rate announced earlier, it would have literally destroyed or collapsed the textile industry that employs, I think, about 200,000 people in that country. So I think this new rate, it will give them some breathing space. It will also enable them to be more competitive in the US market. So they will continue to export textiles to the US.
In effect, Doctor, where does this now leave AGOA?
Well, I think AGOA is as good as gone, because these tariffs. I don't think the Trump administration will renew AGOA, and because AGOA means that African countries will have duty-free access to the US market. And then if you look at the list of the affected African countries, most of them are part of AGOA. So I don't think people should still be talking about AGOA. I think it will become history. But then African countries must now come together and strategize on how to go about, because one reason why African countries have not been able to strike a trade deal with the United States is because they negotiate individually and separately. And in negotiating individually and separately, they are very small economies with hardly any impact on the US economy. So they will be at the back of the queue in terms of negotiating trade deals with the United States. But I think if they come together as a collective and strategize collectively, they have a good chance of getting a better trade terms from the Trump administration.
And you bring up a really good point there, Dr. Ngala, the fact that the countries negotiated individually. Which are the bodies that you believe should have been front and center at the negotiation table? What role, for example, does the African Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat play? The role, perhaps, of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, the regional economic communities, for example?
Well, I think we would have had to look at regional, sub-regional organizations like the Southern African Customs Union, for example. It's a customs union, which means the five countries that make up that customs union: Namibia, Lesotho, the Kingdom of Eswatini, Botswana, and South Africa, have a common trade policy. Whatever tariffs they are going to charge the US goods coming into their customs union, it has to be the same, because they have a common external tariff. So they have the institutional framework already to negotiate collectively, or with the United States. maybe COMESA as well. But the problem with the common market for East and Southern Africa is that they launched a customs union in 2009, but that customs union is not yet operational. So there is no institutional basis for them to adopt a common trade policy or negotiate from a common position. It will take political will from the member states to come to a common position with regards to their trade with the United States. So the same applies at the continental level. The African Continental Free Trade Area is really just a free trade area that seeks to enhance intra-African trade. But in terms of trade policy, countries are free to have their own independent and separate trade policies. So lacking that institutional framework, it will then take political will from the member states of the African Continental Free Trade Area to come to a common position, which is highly unlikely.
Dr. Ngala, we'll have to leave it at that for this afternoon, but we thank you so much for your insight on this matter.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's been a pleasure, sir. That's Dr. Sizwe Ngala. He's a research fellow at the Center for China-Africa Studies at the University of Johannesburg. Now, a quick summary before we go to the markets desk. Lesotho initially had 50% tariffs, later reduced to 15%. Madagascar is sitting at 47%, so not much of a reduction for them. Their textile industry going to be largely impacted there. Mauritius also sitting at a really high 40%. Botswana at 37%. Angola 32%. And South Africa and Algeria sitting at 30%. Remember also that there's this 10% tariff, which is the baseline 10% tariff, which applies to other countries that are beneficiaries of AGOA. I'm talking about Ethiopia, Kenya, Egypt, and Tanzania. So unless these are specified, they will fall under the baseline 10% tariff, and this would include countries like Burkina Faso, the Seychelles, and Somalia as well. It's 4:32 Central African time. Let's over now to the economic desk, where Thabiso Lehoko is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks to Thami, and in our indicators, $1 in South Africa will cost you 18 Rand 9. In Botswana, it's at 13.35. Namibia, 18 Namibian dollars 9. And in Zambia, the dollar is trading at 22.91. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 521. Ethiopia, 138 birr 128. And in Uganda, it's at 3,000 shilling, 564, and in Tanzania, the dollar will cost you 2,000 shilling, 558. The dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,530 naira. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 49 Egyptian pound 620. Tunisia, 2 dinar 891, and in Algeria, the dollar will cost you 130 dinar 3. Morocco is at 985 to the US dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 912 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is at 2,870 to the dollar. Commodities markets now: gold is trading at $3,297, and platinum $1,270 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $71.04 a barrel. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lehoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Standing by for the business of sport, here is Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
In our business of sports, we begin with football news business. The sports minister, Gayton McKenzie, says the South African Football Association, SAFA, has undertaken to pay the fees and bonuses of Banyana Banyana players within 30 days of completing a match. In a written parliamentary reply, McKenzie says SAFA has indicated that while it continuously explores ways of securing funding for women's football,
potential sponsors have not been responding positively. Mackenzie was responding to a question by the chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee, Joe McLuha, about the agreement between SAFA and Banyana Banyana regarding outstanding fees and player remuneration following the potential boycott of their match against Morocco a month ago. And Zimbabwe Football Association ZIFA requires significant funding for the stadium renovations, with estimates ranging from millions to potentially over $50 million depending on the scope and desired upgrades. A specific example in the National Sports Stadium, which was allocated $7.4 million for upgrades to meet FIFA standards. However, the association has faced challenges in securing and managing funds, particularly after a grant application for $10 million for a stadium construction was mismanaged, leading to reduced funding by FIFA. Due to the mismanagement of the $10 million grant, ZIFA now receives only $800,000 annually from FIFA, a significant decrease from the usual $1.56 million allocated to FIFA affiliates. Still with football news, Barcelona have announced that a new 4-year strategic partnership has been agreed with the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the DRC. As part of the sponsorship deal, Barca's professional teams will wear RD Congo on the back of their training shirts for the next 4 years, and the Spotify Camp Nou will host the house of the DRC and their facilities. FC Barcelona, through the Barca Academy system, will create and develop a program of sports activities, including camps and clinics. Although Barca did not disclose the amount it will receive for the deal, recent reports claimed it is worth more than $45 million. Last month, AC Milan and AC Monaco also agreed similar partnership deals with the DRC. Now on to tennis news. Wheelchair tennis multiple Grand Slam winner Kgothatso Monjane has handed over a multi-purpose tennis court to Ledaba Special School at Ngowanguwa in Zanin in South Africa's Limpopo province. She says the donation is being made during Women's Month to highlight her dedication to empowering the next generation of wheelchair tennis players and to leave a lasting legacy.
What motivated me to do projects like this? It's simply my story. I'm someone who was born and raised in the rural areas, and yet I'm a tennis player. Growing up without facilities like this just made me realize, how much people in the disadvantaged communities or rural areas are talented, but because they lack facilities, they are not able to really showcase their talents.
Speaking at the handover in Ngowanguwa, Sports, Arts and Culture Minister Getty McKenzie says Monjane's contribution has inspired the department to accelerate the building of sports infrastructure in rural areas.
It is so inspirational what our tennis star has done. She's plowing back, and as far as the department is concerned, we've already started in far and wide. I think we've already, since I'm a minister, we've already opened 11 so far. Next week we're opening again once in Eden Park. As far as this is concerned, what makes me so emotional is the fact that Kgothatso didn't have this at her school, but he is a Grand Slam champion today.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is exactly 4:39 Central African time as we turn our focus now to the G20. Its member countries have adopted a declaration at the Labour and Employment Ministerial meeting that's taking place in George in the Western Cape, South Africa. This in an effort to reduce inequality as well as to empower youth and women. This declaration builds on the Brisbane goal at the G20 summit, which took place in Australia in 2014. The Brisbane to eThekwini goal aims to reduce the gender gap in labour by the year 2030. The Nelson Mandela Bay target was also adopted to reduce the youth unemployment rate by 5% in the next 5 years. Sagri Chetty reports.
The George leg of the G20 Employment Working Group meeting once again highlighted the role of youth and women in the labour market, as well as the importance of raising minimum wages globally. Delegates have now adopted a declaration for global labour issues. The Department of Employment and Labour acknowledged the process has been uneven in trying to make good on the 2014 Brisbane goal, which adopted the commitment to reduce the gender gap in labour force participation by 25% by 2025. The department said that while nearly all G20 countries have narrowed the gap since 2012, only about half are on track to meet the target by next year. Luke Triangle, General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, said their priorities remain focused on the youth.
Many of young people, when they enter the labor markets, they are faced with informal work. They are faced with precarious contracts, and that needs to change. Well, we need to give a good future to young people with good contracts, with good employment conditions, and with good wages. Women participation in the labor market, we are lacking behind. We need to increase women participation in the labor market and also at good conditions. So equal pay for work of equal value is also one of the priorities that we put forward as International Trade Union Confederation.
Norway's Deputy Minister of Labour and Social Inclusion, Jetil Vavle, said all the sessions and discussions were eye-opening.
We have a lot of things to learn from the South Africa presidency when it comes to labor and employment. I think that we have to think, I think we have a lot in common when it comes to also everything from platform economy to how to reduce the pay gap between men and women. I think also in South Africa I've learned that it's also a big informal sector that the presidency and the government now is working to get into the formal sector of the labour market.
South Africa's labour attaché in Geneva, Siyabonga Khadebe, said the declaration sets a clear agenda for decent work and lives by reducing inequality and empowering youth and women.
We are hoping that at the end of the day, the entire South African G20 presidency can achieve what we've achieved. But these are just baby steps. We still have a long way to go, because these outcomes that we've attained here in George, we are taking them up to Johannesburg for the Leaders Summit in November.
It is exactly 4:43 Central African time. Now, to something that a lot of consumers I know are very personally invested in. This is the issue of debt, something that is needed in day-to-day life. There's hardly anybody who doesn't have any sort of debt. But what happens when life throws you a curveball and you're no longer able to meet your financial obligations? Well, in an event of something of that nature happening, consumers are advised to take out what is called credit life insurance, as their debt doesn't disappear when they die. Their debt, doesn't disappear when they lose their jobs. It remains there until it is paid, and somebody has got to pay it. So in the event of somebody dying, their debts are generally paid out of the money or out of the property that has been left in their estate. Now, in the event that the estate cannot pay that debt and there's no one who shared responsibility for that debt, it may go unpaid in that particular instance. But here's an expert to help us unpack this a little bit further and give us all the nuances that are involved in these various scenarios. It's Selim Nyati, Consumer Financial Education Specialist at Momentum Group. Welcome to African Business. So good to have you with us.
It's so great to be with you, Thami, and thank you so much, and greetings to the listeners.
Now, what an important topic to discuss. I was just saying earlier on that, debt is so much a part of our lives, so much a part of our existence and reality. But what happens to that debt if, for example, somebody dies and there is no estate to settle that debt, or there's no insurance to cover that debt?
Thami, a lot of times we see this. We hear stories that now the children are being harassed, or the surviving spouse is being harassed. Sometimes what happens is that there's a repossession, maybe, let's say the house, now they can't pay the house, and then all of a sudden the surviving spouse or the children are left homeless, or there's just family feuds. But here's the thing. There is this insurance called credit life insurance or credit life cover that a lot of people are paying for, but very few people claim for it or are aware of it. And this is an insurance that doesn't just, kick in when you die, but it also kicks in when you are retrenched at work, when you lose your job, or when you now have an illness, a disability. That's what I meant to say. A disability, whether it's permanent or temporary, where you can't earn an income to actually pay for the debt. So what this insurance does, it covers the life of the credit. That's why it's called the credit life cover. For as long as that debt is still active, this insurance kicks in. And many of us, Thami, are paying for it right now.
So could we, Salam, is it safe enough to say that if you've got a bond and your property is bonded, that then is a very high likelihood that you actually do have credit life insurance for the life of that bond?
Correct. And in fact, the reason why many people don't really notice this insurance, Thami, is because, for example, for normal credit like personal loans, credit cards, clothing accounts, car finance, you pay R4.50, or the law says cap it at R4.50 for every 1,000 rands that you owe. So now if you owe, for example, 4,000 rands, you may not notice that 18 rands that goes out, right? Same with your bond, same with your car, etc. Many of us are sitting with that insurance for our bond repayments, for our car repayments, our personal loans. And what do we do when we lose our jobs? We go and make arrangements. We take ourselves through drastic measures like debt review, for example, whereas all you need to do is claim for the insurance, because nobody's going to claim for the insurance for you. And what it does, Thami, while you are out of the job, you're looking for a new job, it continues to pay that installment for 12 months. After 12 months, you go back to the credit provider if you still have not received a job to say, here's my retrenchment letter from the last time I claimed. I still haven't received a job and I'm back again to claim for another 24 months. Depending on the kind of credit it is, they may say, we will settle this debt or consider the debt settled, or your insurance will settle the debt. But people need to claim. And you look at your statement, Thami, there's something that's written there on your statement that says CPP. That's your credit life cover right there. But you know what we don't do? We don't read our statements.
Hey, all you want is give me the money so I can get my house.
And sign initial every page.
Do you know what I mean? Just sign initial, you're busy initialing, but we don't read the finer details, which we actually need when, fortune changes. But I wonder, Salam, this works really nicely for people who are full-time employed. But what about people who own their own businesses, who are entrepreneurs or who are contract workers? I have found that some of these credit life insurances will have that as an exclusion, saying if you're a contract worker, you're not going to be covered if your contract ends, for example.
Thami, in 2017, the National Credit Act introduced an amendment to the credit life cover insurance to say that it should actually be part of any credit agreement. And it doesn't say you should be working like this or, permanent or contract for as long, because remember the focus here is the credit agreement, not necessarily you. So the moment they give you this credit, you can get the insurance for the credit and not be denied insurance for the credit. So that should you not have income to service the credit, then the insurance that you've been paying for that should then kick in. So it's
Is
yeah.
it,
So it's
is
not
it legal? Is it legal? Is it lawful for them to exclude certain types of payments?
No, Tammy. They shouldn't, because according to the law that governs credit agreements, it should be included in your credit agreement. So nobody can prejudice you, because that's then discriminating, that's being unfair. Why are you giving me the credit then if you feel I don't qualify, and then make certain exclusions that are unlawful, like I can't protect this credit? If you feel that I don't qualify for whatever reason, then I shouldn't get the credit, instead of you plunging me into it, but then you say, oh no, you can't protect it with any form of insurance.
What happens if somebody's listening to this, Salam, and they're saying, I wish I knew this 3 months ago, or I wish I knew this a year before? Can you now claim, perhaps retrospectively, can you claim on a debt that you've negotiated terms on, and maybe you've already, settled that debt, but it was really, really difficult for you to do that?
Unfortunately, Tammy, think of any kind of insurance. You've been in an accident and you took your car to the mechanic instead of claiming, right? So it's that kind of thing as well. Unfortunately, if you haven't claimed for it, then you can't then go back and want to restart the process. And that's why we're educating consumers to say, the first thing you need to do, if you already have existing credit, is to look at your statement. Go and find that line item, over and above that capital amount, the interest that's being charged, the number of installment months. There should be something that says CPP, Credit Protection Plan. If it's there, then you know you're covered. If it's not there, contact your credit provider to make sure that you have credit life insurance. So it's very important, the first step, to go to your actual statement. A lot of credit agreements, Tammy, they come with this credit life cover anyway now, since August 2017. But it's always good for consumers to make sure. And anybody who's taking up new credit, make sure that by the time you sign and you take out that credit protection plan, that credit life insurance is in place. And it's an amount, Tammy, that will go out every month, bundled in your installment. So it's calculated in.
And ignorance is the one thing that will kill us all. So it's there, use it. Salam Nyati, thank you for a really, really important conversation. Some pearls of wisdom shared there. I hope everybody who's listening will go through their statements really, really carefully and make sure you've got that credit cover. You probably do have it. So then use it. Salam Nyati, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Thami.
Thank you. She's a consumer financial education specialist at the Momentum Group. Credit Protection Plan is what it's called. It's gotten exactly 4:53.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Ooh, so much to cover this afternoon on our business roundup, which we have every single week right about this time with Victor Kgomoeswana, author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. He is also the Executive Director for Marketing and Communication at the University of Limpopo. Good afternoon to you, Victor. Good to have you with us once again.
Good to talk to you again, Thami, on this beautiful Friday.
Let's start off with a bit of a sporting business here with Barcelona and their sponsorship deal with the DRC.
Everybody loves the winner, Thami. So this is, as you know, Barcelona is one of the most successful teams in La Liga, Spain. After Real Madrid is probably the second most successful, the reigning champions. It's a $50 million deal, 4 years, to have your name, as in the country, back of the jersey of Barcelona. It means when the strikers are out there scoring, the last thing you'll see will be the heart of Africa. Visit the DRC, and the club, Barcelona, will also host at their home stadium, Camp Nou, what they call an immersive exhibition. This is sort of a cultural experience where you'll be able to experience the culture of the DRC and also be able to get the history of the sport in that country. But they also have, as part of the deal, according to the sports minister, Didier Badimbo, going to train about 50 young Congolese sports stars or athletes and 10 coaches. So it's a development thing. And remember, Barcelona is not just football, Thami. It's got basketball, it's got handball, it's got hockey. So they are going to be training all across this. But the interesting thing is the deal also, there's a similar deal with AC Milan in Serie A in Italy and AS Monaco in Ligue 1 in France, following the steps of Rwanda, which is advertising on 4 major leagues. Bayern Munich in Germany, PSG in France, Arsenal in the UK, and I think also Atletico Madrid in La Liga. So it shows you that tourism can cost a bit of money, but if you are pitching your awareness of your country to the right audience, you have to do it. People will question whether $50 million could be better spent elsewhere. But because the DRC has guerrilla trekking in the Rwenzori Mountains where it meets Rwanda and Uganda, maybe this will be worth the while. I haven't seen any bad advertising, especially in markets like the people who watch La Liga.
And it's a unique experience as well for tourists. But let's look at this deal, Victor, between Egypt Air and Rolls-Royce. What are they cooking up?
Yeah, the engine, when you fly, you'll be flying Egypt Air or SAA or Kenya Airways, but the engine that's moving the aeroplane often is either Rolls-Royce or a General Electric engine. So those are the two main companies that I know that make aircraft engines. So Egypt Air, as you know, is one of the biggest and the oldest airlines in Africa. And they are talking to Rolls-Royce because there are all kinds of concerns these days about engine monitoring. You know, you've had many aircraft crashing, and people just don't know exactly what happened. Did the signals not go off? What exactly is the story? December, they will be delivering about 16 XWB engines. These are to power the 11 Airbus 330s that are part of the fleet at Egypt Air, the 8 Boeing 787 Dreamliners. That's the largest Boeing you can get. So it's almost the chairman of Egypt Air, Ahmed Adel, going out there to monitor, because the concern about air safety is increasingly becoming a topic for the center stage because of the mysterious air crashes that are happening. You saw in India not so long ago, there was a Boeing jet that just crashed mysteriously. About 8 years ago, there was that Ethiopian Airlines that crashed, and Boeing couldn't just find what exactly happened. There was error. So this is the chairman getting involved to make sure that when he visited the UK in Derby, the UK where the headquarters for Rolls-Royce is, he was just trying to make sure that although they are part of governance and they're not running the company day to day, the board can be able to account much better on safety of their aircraft.
And I tell you what, when it comes to premium names, Rolls-Royce is right there at the top. Victor, there's a story that we're not going to be able to get to today because of time, but I think we've got, we still have a couple of weeks ahead of this. This is the Kenya story. The Treasury, National Treasury there, planning to sell a stake of Kenya Pipeline Company. Maybe let's park that story for next week because, they still have a deadline of September. But maybe let's break it down. Let's dissect it next week, shall we?
Definitely. Keep it on record. We will discuss it. KPC is a big company, and this is a new trend that's emerging. So I would like to talk about that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Victor Khumswana. You have yourself a splendid weekend ahead.
You too, Thami. Bye-bye.
All right, then. Take care. That's Victor Khumswana rounding up the business for this week. A lot to focus on as far as Africa is concerned. It's gone exactly 4:58 Central African time, and this is how we come to the end of this week's edition of Africa in Business. Thank you so much to our producer, Mabo Boloka, our technical producer, Bongi Moyo, social media talent, Botelezi, and also our team on news, Jwalane Tulo Ngwape, economics desk, Tabiso Lehuku, and from the sporting desk, Figile Lingwati. I'm Thami Ngubeni. This has been Africa in Business on Channel Africa as we hand the reins over now to the French desk and the Joëls. Have yourself a splendid evening further. Good.
Vue d'Afrique, un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joël Mouteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h, temps universel. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bonjour à tous et bienvenue sur Canal Afrique, la perspective africaine de l'information qui est